Thanks for joining us on the NRT Now podcast, part of the largest Christian music site online, newreleasetoday.com. Sit back and relax as we chat with your favorite artists, introduce you to new artists, and more. Now here's your host, Jake.
Hey, welcome to episode 52. Just so glad that you're here with us. And real quick before we get going, I just want to say, I know that this next couple of months ahead of us here in the U.S. is going to be probably pretty choppy, pretty dicey, pretty rough. But I just keep going back to this image of Jesus in the boat in the rocky waters. And I know I've probably talked about this in episodes past, but it just keeps coming up. And it's just kind of my theme for what's happening in this moment. The disciples are all on a boat. Jesus is asleep in the lower decks. And the disciples are just freaking out. I mean, it's terrible. We're going to drown. What is going on? And Jesus is still asleep. Even though everything outside the boat looked bad, it still wasn't bad enough to even wake Jesus. The disciples go down and go, dude, there's a storm. We're going to drown. Like, can you do anything? And Jesus just gets up and is like, why are you bothering me? And quiets the storm down. And that's my interpretation of it. But through that all, like, it seemed like it was terrible to the disciples, but for Jesus, it didn't even faze him. And man, everything that's going on right now, God is still with us. And if you're listening to this 2 months down the road, or 3 or 4 months, however far down the road, I mean, we made it through. I mean, no matter what it looks like on the other side, we made it through because God's still on his throne, and he will be, for all eternity until he calls us home. And whatever may come, God is with us. He is with us here. So wait, whatever may come. That sounds like a Jeremy and Adrienne Camp song. I hope so, because that's who our guest is for this episode. And I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. I have been holding on to these Jeremy Camp stories. I've been itching to tell these stories. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Jeremy and Adrienne Camp. So we are hanging out with Jeremy and Adrienne Camp. Hey, thanks so much for joining us, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us, man. I appreciate it.
So through here, we're going to go through, I Still Believe, just like scene by scene, just break down every moment of the movie. No, just totally kidding. But I do want to touch on that for just a second. I just want to say thank you guys so much for doing that. Jeremy, thank you so much for sharing that story. And Adrienne, thank you for being protective of that. Because I know for us, it prompted a conversation with my daughter. We had just watched it for the first time like a month ago. Sorry, guys. It's taking us and it prompted the conversation. I could just hear it from upstairs. Like, my daughter must have asked, why did they make that movie? And she's like, well, sometimes you got to go through tough things in order to get to the other side. Like, we've gone through a few miscarriages, and so she made that parallel of like, we've had to go through that, and now we have baby. And she's like, and our stories help other people. And so that's why they made that movie. So for us, that's the story that came from that movie. So so for me, I just want to say thank you guys for just being so open and just making that movie to allow those kind of conversations.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that story is how you guys met. So I was talking with my wife a little bit about that. And she's like, yeah, that concert we went to back a while ago. Yeah, he was talking about that. I'm like, oh, wow. So what I remember from that show, this is the difference between me and my wife. What I remember, it was Halloween 2007, I want to believe, in Colorado. What I remember were the Ninja Turtles for Halloween. I don't know if you remember that or not, Jeremy.
I do, actually. Absolutely do.
Yeah. So
that's hilarious.
All the band members, 4 of them were the Ninja Turtles. I think it was a keyboard player. You're like, who's he? And he's like, I'm the guy that has to take them trick-or-treating. This is ridiculous. And then you had the arch nemesis, Kermit the Frog, I think is what it was, delivering the pizza, the Domino's. And
That's amazing.
That's pretty funny, actually. I love how that's your memory of me.
yeah, that's
Makes me happy.
That's the difference between my wife and I. Like, I remember that and the longest rendition of Right Here that I've ever heard. I think it was like 15 minutes.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah. And
That's funny.
potential injury. I think Kermit the Frog, there's a minute there. Whoever that was, it was a stagehand or something like that. I think.
Kappa.
Yeah.
Adam Kappa, I think.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That's the difference between my wife and I. It's wonderful.
I love it.
Oh, man. That was an awesome show. That was a totally fun show.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Good to see you again. There you go.
Yeah. So we're talking just a little bit as we were getting everything set up here that I think we'd met before, and we have. I want to talk about just your mission, the music. And the first time I met you, it was in Casper, Wyoming. It was at a benefit concert.
Yep.
I introduced myself as the head of security. Like, that was important at a church of like 1,200 people, you know, like it was a big deal. Woohoo. I was 25. Give me a break.
Yeah, that's all good.
And so Jeremy, the first thing that he said was, we got to arm wrestle. And if I beat you, then we got to do something different. If not, we're good. And
we need security to beat you at arm wrestling.
Yeah. So, I mean, Jeremy is cut. I mean, he's a big guy, and I was legit nervous. But no, so actually what I remember most about that was you figured out what the mission was and why you were at the concert and all that. The first question that you asked is like, are we doing enough? Do we need to do more? You know, how can we help support that? And that's something that's lasted with me for a long time, about just music being more of a ministry than just somehow getting paid and, you know, just a career. So I'd like if you guys can talk just a little bit about music and what you guys do as a ministry, you know, above and beyond the music.
I think for us, you know, it's been a thing that we have a ministry called Speaking Louder Ministries. We've been, how many years now? 10 years, mm-hmm. that. Yeah. And that's just one aspect. And what we do is we go into different countries. Like, for instance, we went to Uganda a few years ago with my family, with my girls, and we did a full free concert. It was 35,000 people showed up at the event, and we had full gospel presentation. We worked with local churches, and it was amazing. I mean, 1,000 people responded to the gospel, which was an incredible experience. But it's more than just that. You know, we worked with local communities with doing a full, it was kind of a conference that we had for leadership in the area, and poured into the local people. It was an all-day thing. We had speaking, we had worship times, we had prayer with everybody. And then we also do a helps project. So we ended up building a hospital facility in Tebe, which was an incredible project. So, I mean, just to see how we have now the ability with the supplies that we've been able to buy to help 50,000 people, which has really been an incredible thing to watch. But there's just aspects of what we do. It's us, and we work with compassion as well. You know, I think our life, what we do when we go and play, the desire is that whatever we're doing that night, how can we have the most impact? And so for me, I always try to share the gospel. It's always not of worship. I always try to share something that God's doing in my heart. I mean, that for me, I think if I go on stage and if I just played music, I would feel like I wasn't accomplishing anything. But the fact that I'm able to go minister the gospel or to see people engage in their relationship with Jesus, that makes it worth it. And I've always said this from the beginning, I'm a minister of the gospel who happens to play music. Though if there's times I get distracted and times that I've had those moments, like we all do, of making those mistakes and being distracted, my heart when I first started and what I continue to go back to is God has called me to minister. And he happens to let me play music to do that. But it's not just music too. It's your everyday life with people you live your life with as well. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, you know, I think for us, and Jeremy kind of covered it all already, but I think for us, it just is about having an eternal impact in people's hearts. You know, if we just were part of an entertainment industry and just didn't ever see anything more than that, or be able to pour into people's lives, you know, on stage, off stage, people around us, I think that's just really, we're storing up our treasures in heaven. You know what I mean? It's not just about here and the now. We really want to be using our lives to touch people's lives as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, and to wrap up that story, I did offer the arm wrestling contest after the show, But you said you were tired at that point. I mean, which is my goal. That's the only way I had a chance.
Doing this all night, like strumming, and then like, yeah, you know, yeah.
That was my only chance. I tried to take it, and it just didn't happen.
I probably was still won, but that's okay.
Yes.
I just did.
Very much. So, Adrienne, I'm really excited to see you come out with this worship project as well, because when I was not very much younger, we'll just say not very much younger, back in the day of sampler CDs, and for all those youngins, record store or the Christian music stores came out with these sampler CDs of different songs and different up and coming artists. It wasn't playlists on Spotify. Like, they actually had these physical CDs that were made.
Yep.
And one of those was the Benjamin Gate. And that was one of my favorite CDs. And I think How Long was on that that one. I can't remember who it was through or whatever. I probably don't even have that CD anymore. But that was one of my absolute favorite songs from, I want to say I was like mid-teenage or something like that.
That's awesome.
So I'm really excited to see you come out and do more. And what's the period between Benjamin Gate and this worship project been for you?
Well, I've sort of dabbled in music a little bit. I did 2 solo albums, and then I actually got to write a rock song for the movie. And unfortunately, it didn't make it into the final cut, but it did go into the soundtrack.
It's on the soundtrack though, so that's good.
So it's on Spotify, and that's been awesome. But I think, for me, it's been more, I've just taken a back seat and really more just kind of supported Jeremy. And we've actually gone on the road a bunch with him. And then I'll sing background vocals for him a bunch, and like harmonies in the studio and all of that stuff. But it just didn't feel like it was the right timing at all. And then just in quarantine, we just found ourselves with a whole lot more time. And worship was just something that had been, in a sense, healing and comforting to us through just trying to understand what on earth was going on and what the Lord was doing in this season. Because obviously with everything shut down, for us, it was quite, although exciting in the fact that the movie came out, but also devastating, because literally our whole entire lives, all we've known for the last 20 years just came to a screeching halt, So really just trying to regather our thoughts and just press into the Lord, like, God, what are you saying for us right now?
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of really sweet worship times together as a family. And then we even did a couple online with people. And so the worship EP just kind of was this natural thing that sort of birthed out of that, So for me, I mean, it's just kind of like, I don't know. I'm like, Lord, what do you want me to do?
I mean, we did, wrote the marriage book. You know what I mean, that was a big thing. But then,
I've been doing writing. Actually, I wrote a children's book and then the marriage book as well. So we've kind of had our fingers, like I've had my fingers in a bunch of little pies.
Well, and you're also like teaching the kids.
Totally.
I mean, she's like homeschool forever. And so she's major. I mean, like, that's harder work when I do. Kids and take care of kids. So it is. I couldn't do it.
I'm with you there, Jeremy. We've homeschooled from the get-go, and I'm the principal that comes in that has to yell every once in a while, and I just walk away. Like, just no.
Yeah, periodic yell. Yeah. Like, honey, I need you.
Perfect.
So that kind of leads me into the third Jeremy Camp story that I have is we were in, I think it was Northern Colorado. It was an amphitheater. You were on tour with Barlow Girl at the time. I don't remember who else was there. I know. I'm throwing it way back.
Wow. So we have our people doing the lawn right now. Oh no, it's so loud. So I apologize if it's you're weed eating right now.
That happened
this
earlier.
Is real life.
Exactly.
Real life right here.
Hashtag quarantine life. Quarantine.
Exactly.
Quarantine life. That happened earlier across the street, and I was legitimately worried, like, stop, please.
I know. Now I'm kind of like, well,
that's staying in the episode. This is real life here.
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
So yeah, we were on tour with Barlow Girl, and I can't remember who else. And it was an outdoor amphitheater, and those rain clouds came in, and it was really threatening to just shut down the show. Everything was covered, the speakers were down, all that. And I want to say about 15 minutes after that, you came out with your guitar and just came out with a moment of worship. And I think Barlow Girl came out and joined you on that one. And we just kind of had this low-key, just acoustic stripped-down moment of worship. And the rain, actually, the clouds kind of split right around our venue. And we never actually had to truly shut down. But just,
I remember that.
Wow. I'm glad that you remember these. I'm not just making these up. That makes me so happy.
I remember those. Because they're memorable for me as well, because it's complete diversion from what I usually do, as in a sense of like the typical. So it's like, when you have to divert and pivot, I remember those things. I've had about a handful, probably about 10 of those moments I remember.
Yeah, like I said, I'm just glad that I'm not completely crazy in remembering these. It is an actual memory. Yes.
There you go. There you go. Wasn't a dream.
Yes. But it was just such a powerful moment and just such a powerful time, just that stripped down worship. And now you have this worship EP. So I just like to talk a little bit about kind of that heart of worship and the power of worship and, you know, what it can do through the music.
Yeah, I think for me, it was a way to really the response of what God was doing in our hearts during this time. And I think that we were able to write down the deep things that God was teaching us. You know, the song Whatever May Come was written 3 days after our tour got canceled and the movie we heard was going to be taken out of theaters. And so there's a disappointment there. And so, you know, sometimes the way I display my emotions or articulate what God's teaching me is through music. And so here I am upstairs writing the song, and then I see the impact. Me and her sing it and just post it on Facebook and Instagram, and responded in a very just encouraging and deep way. So you're going, okay, God's using this. And so I just allowed, and we both feel like we allowed ourselves to just kind of speak things that were on our hearts during this time. And so, you know, we were able to worship. It's kind of was just an extension of our worship time with the Lord. We had a bunch of times of worship online with some people. We had times with our kids of worship and Bible study. And so this is just us expressing the things that God's teaching us during this time.
So Adrienne, what was this writing process and with this worship project like from your side of it, kind of coming back in? You're talking that you've kind of done a little bit now. Here you have the whole worship EP.
Yeah, it was amazing, you know, just sitting down and we have a little home studio that we set up during quarantine, actually.
Yeah, nice.
Jeremy was just, he was like, okay, I've got to get this figured out. I've got to do something, you know. And so we just kind of sat together and hashed through some melodies and lyrics, and some of the songs we co-wrote with a couple other people. So we had some pieces. And I mean, honestly, I think the heart behind it was just not to overcomplicate it, not to overthink it, but literally just share what was on our hearts to comfort others. And so I think Jeremy and I have found as well that when God is really in something, there's an ease to it that, like a lightness to it, I guess, that I think for us, this project really just felt easy, to be honest with you. And not to say that there's not time to like push through and time to work hard and all of that stuff, because there is that too. But for us in this season, we just kind of felt like God was really just bringing this together easily, you know, and we love our producer, Jordan Sapp. He did an amazing job. Yeah. And so, yeah, it was fun. We had a blast together.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So Whatever May Come was the first one. I remember seeing that on Instagram. You were saying that was kind of the one that kicked it off, like, oh, maybe we should do something.
Yeah. It was more like, it wasn't even a thing where I was going, okay, because it did so well, we should do something. It was more like, okay, God, obviously you are stirring in people's hearts. And if you have more songs, cool. If you don't, then that's fine, you know? And so I would literally have times where, you know, everyone would be like, are you gonna write another song? I'm like, only if the Lord gives it to me. And he did. He kept giving me songs. And basically it got to the point where it was enough to where we felt like, you know, we should put this out there. You know, I just felt really strongly I was supposed to do it. And Adrienne agreed too. And that's why I think it was so smooth, because we didn't feel like it was manufactured at all.
That's so cool. And I'd kind of gotten a little hint that you guys are back in the studio a bit, or at least Jeremy is. Am I letting out too many secrets here?
I'm back to homeschooling.
Yeah, he's back to homeschooling. We're actually back to writing for my next record, actually.
Gotcha. I was just told studio, and I just assumed what I was hoping that both of you were going back in there. So,
honestly, after this, we'll probably just keep putting out these worship EPs. I would love to do that. I mean, I don't want to say it for sure because I don't want to put pressure on, but if it's in the flow, we want to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I know I have a personal request that I want to see How Long redone. And I don't know, honestly, why you haven't done that yet, but that's just my opinion.
That's awesome.
I love it.
Yeah, I love that song. It's one of my favorites, too.
I mean, I could see just a good Jeremy Camp just rock, just going out for it.
That'd be rad. Let's do it. We need to do a rock album together is what we need to do.
Yeah.
That would be rad.
I think so.
Would you be into that?
I would buy it. I'd be all in.
As long as you would buy it, that's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, just funnel the MP3s this way and we'll be good. We'll be good.
That's awesome.
I love it.
From a ministry standpoint, through this quarantine, just everything being different, everything being weird, what do you guys see from a ministry perspective going forward, whether it be what the shows look like forward or
Yeah, I think honestly, that's the place that we're in right now, is we feel like God has cleaned our plate right now. Mm-hmm. We don't have a clear cut kind of, this is what it's exactly going to look like. Because for one, I can't plan until March because of everything still. So I think what we're waiting for is just saying, okay, God, you lead us and direct us. You put on our plate what you want. And I think that's kind of where we're at. And I'm okay with that. Like, it's kind of the first time in my life where I'm like, I'm okay with not having the 100% direction of this next season, because I think I've always pushed through and said, we got to do this and got to do that. And now it's like, we have some time to say, God, you put forth what you want to put forth on our plate, because then it'll be effective instead of just us forcing things just to do things. And so, of course, I want to do a world tour probably on this, because of the movie has been all over the world, which has been incredible. Speaking Louder Ministries, we're going to do some more events, and so that's, of course, something that's on the horizon. And then Money Record will come out next year. So, I'm working on that. But.
And then something super fun is that both of our older daughters, Bella and Ari, they've been writing songs as well. So Jeremy, actually, we got into the studio with both of them, and they're going to be releasing a song. Each of them will. And so Aries comes out in a few days, and Bella will come out in about a month or so, I think, right? Yeah.
That's so cool.
So that's been kind of fun, just to see the creativity
the next generation
come out of them too,
I had that question in the back of my head, but I'm glad that you brought that out.
Perfect.
I thought I remembered seeing something about that, asking, are the camp kids musical? And like, they have to be.
They all are. Yeah, they all three
absolutely are.
Yeah.
It's insane.
So who spent more time in the studio, your daughters or you guys in your home studio?
Definitely us. But I can see them. I bought them small little tiny things in GarageBand, and so they're trying to work on stuff, writing songs, and they're doing amazing.
That is so cool. What I love to do at the end of an episode, I actually haven't done this in a while, is to just kind of open the mic up and just let you guys just kind of share what's on your guys' hearts right now and in the season or moving forward, or just kind of what's been eating at you is probably not the right word, but just kind of what's been heavy on your guys' heart lately.
I think for me, in one of the songs that we wrote on the worship EP, it's called Your Way, Yahweh. And it just talks about, Lord, purify our hearts, teach us how to walk in your ways. And I feel like as a culture, we've been so influenced by the world. The church culture has been so influenced by the world. And I think there's almost this resetting that needs to take place in order for us to learn again what it is to walk a life modeled after Jesus. What did Jesus actually tell us? How did he actually tell us how to live? And just for us, our hearts to be purified, our motives to be purified, for us to really just get our eyes fixed again on God and what he wants, not listening to the media, not listening to just the strongest opinions around us, really, really just, in a sense, like falling in love with Jesus all over again and just being about God's business and not just always our own agendas,
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, it's the whole, you're right, the 2020 clear vision.
Yeah.
We're telling a group of kids last night, just understanding that we're so fed that do whatever makes you happy, and it's all about you and what you can do and what's in it for you. And that's completely contrary to what God has called us to live as believers. He says to deny yourself and to pick up your cross. And so obviously there's sacrifice and there's denying of self. Jesus was the ultimate servant, and so this is definitely us going, okay, God, like what we're trying to do, what do you want to put on our plate? What do you want us to do? Mm-hmm. And, our dreams and desires, if we're in line with him, will be what he wants from us anyway. It won't be, God, you come and do what my dream and my desire is. Exactly. It's more like, God, I want to do what your dream and desire is for me, because we're on the same page, basically. So
I really think that 2020 has brought out a ton of that. Now you guys say that, I mean, that's on full display right now.
Yes, it's good. We need it. Refocusing for sure.
I think it was Natalie Grant that was saying that I think God is really trying to get the attention of his church. And he's really trying to get his church to come back to his heart. And
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I see it as that. I don't see it. I mean, yes, it's difficult, and yes, and I'm sad of what's happened, but there's a shaking that takes place sometimes that we need in order for us to reset,
Yeah.
For sure. Well, I can't think of any better way to end this. I mean, the strong word there. I still think that we need to have the arm wrestling match, Jeremy. I know I'm still going to lose, but,
I like it. I like your style.
Whenever tours come back around sometime.
Yeah, there you go.
I know, right?
Exactly.
So,
right on, man.
All right, well, thanks for taking the time. Yeah, good. I was just gonna say thanks for taking the time to hang out with us.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks for hanging out with us for this episode of the NRT Now podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And special thanks to Neon Feather for providing our theme music. Make sure to check out newreleasetoday.com and our socials for more great content. See you next episode.